Walk away, and you'll discover who they truly are. Not when you're fighting, not when you're pleasing, but when you choose distance. In certain relationships, your simple act of stepping back is enough to trigger a crisis that reveals everything. There were no betrayals, no accusations, no explosions. You simply chose silence, space, and sovereignty. Yet, in response, the other person unravels. Rage, panic, blame, desperation. As if your absence tore something essential from the very core of their being. This reaction may seem disproportionate, but it makes perfect sense, not logically, but psychologically. Carl Gustav Jung teaches us that in many relationships, especially those governed by unconscious dynamics, you are not seen for who you are. You are seen as a projection, a symbol. The other unconsciously shapes you into something that holds their emotional architecture in place. You're not just a person to them. You're a function. Maybe you were the mother who soothed, the father who anchored, the mirror that reassured, the lifeline that prevented collapse. And that is exactly why when you walk away, what crumbles isn't just the relationship. It's the illusion, the emotional scaffolding you unknowingly provided. John Bowlby's attachment theory, along with Mary Ainsworth's groundbreaking research, explains how certain people, especially those with anxious attachment, cling to others not out of love, but out of fear. To them, your consistency is stability. Your presence is medication. When you disrupt that pattern, their inner chaos can no longer be held back. And as Margaret Mahler describes, this moment feels like a forced psychological birth, a ripping away from a fusion that was never fully individuated. For someone who has emotionally merged with you, consciously or not, your departure is not just a separation. It's an amputation. You didn't just exit their life as a partner or a friend. You exited as a psychic organ, a stabilizer, a mirror they depended on to function. That is why they fall apart. In this video, we'll unpack this unraveling. With Jung, we'll explore how projections and archetypes shape our emotional attachments. With Bowlby and Ainsworth, we'll dive into the roots of anxious bonding. With Mahler, we'll confront how deep separation wounds touch infantile pain that was never resolved. All of this serves one purpose: to help you grasp a truth that's hard to accept but vital to your freedom. The other person's despair isn't always evidence of deep love. Many times, it's simply terror. Terror of being left alone with their own inner emptiness, without you there to cover it up. So if you've ever been shamed for choosing yourself, if you've ever felt guilty for needing peace more than proximity, if you've ever sensed that you were not the problem, but the placeholder for someone else's wounds, then this video is your reflection. Carl Jung once wrote, "We are born as originals, but we die as copies, not because we consciously choose to abandon our truth, but because we silently mold ourselves into what others expect and demand the same from them." Many of the relationships we call love are nothing more than a dance of mutual projections. You rarely see the other person for who they truly are. And the unsettling truth is, they don't see you clearly either. What we relate to is not the person, but the image we've created of them. An image shaped more by our unconscious needs than by their reality. Carl Jung explained this using the concept of archetypes, universal psychic patterns embedded in the collective unconscious. These archetypes are not just abstract symbols. They are active psychological forces projected onto people in our lives without us even realizing it. And so, without meaning to, you might become the nurturing mother, the heroic father, the loyal savior, the wise guide, or the feared shadow. You become a symbolic figure, a psychic placeholder for something unresolved in the other person's inner world. Why does this happen? Because the human psyche, especially a wounded one, cannot bear the chaos of emptiness. It assigns roles, it invents meaning, even if false, just to keep internal order. And then, you walk into someone's life and unknowingly become their structure. Your voice becomes soothing because it signals safety. Your presence feels like home because it represents stability. Even your silence, though personal to you, is interpreted as abandonment, not of you as a person, but of the archetype they projected onto you. And here lies the crucial danger. The more someone is disconnected from their own inner self, the more they will need you to fill that void. But they don't need you, they need the function you provide. You are elevated, not to be honored, but to be leaned on. And every time a foundation is removed, the house shakes. The same happens here. When you step back or detach, it's not just the relationship that unravels. It's the fantasy, the carefully constructed psychic illusion they built around your presence. They don't miss your jokes, your voice, your eyes. They miss the emotional order you unknowingly maintained within them. The sense of security your presence gave. And now that it's gone, the void reappears. This symbolic entanglement is particularly strong in those who have never faced their inner shadows. Jung emphasized that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, demands that you turn inward, confront the darkness, and dismantle projections. But many avoid this. It's far easier to project your wounds onto another than to look them in the mirror. And when this projection combines with anxious attachment, the dynamic becomes even more fragile, almost explosive. The relationship turns from symbolic to existential. You are no longer just an image. They need you like air, like ground beneath their feet. This is what we will unpack in the next part. What happens when symbolic projection meets the terror of abandonment? When you're no longer just a person, but both archetype and anchor? We're about to walk into the unstable terrain of anxious attachment. If what you're hearing resonates with your experience, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and support the channel. Thank you. Because when we talk about attachment, we're not just talking about love. We're talking about emotional survival. According to John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory, our earliest years lay down the relational blueprints that determine how we seek connection and how we fear disconnection. These attachment patterns don't arise by chance. They are the scars of emotional experiences repeated so often they become psychological law. If someone grew up with inconsistent love, emotional neglect, or chaotic caregiving, they learned early on that affection is never safe. And love, no matter how warm it feels, always comes hand in hand with dread. The dread of being left behind. This is the realm of anxious attachment, a space where human connection is not experienced as mutual affection, but as emotional oxygen, a lifeline. The anxiously attached don't love gently. They love as if their survival depends on it. Because in their psyche, it does. They don't simply relate to the other. They cling. They fuse. The other becomes an extension of their own nervous system. They need the other to soothe them, to center them, to remind them that they exist. Without that external presence, their internal world spirals. Even subtle signs of distance, a slower reply, a distracted tone, a moment of silence, are interpreted as warning signals. I'm being abandoned. Mary Ainsworth, the brilliant collaborator of John Bowlby, brought empirical clarity to this through her famous strange situation experiment. In this study, children with anxious attachment would become visibly distressed when their caregiver left the room, just for a minute. They would cry, panic, even become disoriented. And when the caregiver returned, the reaction wasn't simple relief. It was a cocktail of clinging, protest, anger, and desperation. But this pattern doesn't disappear with age. It just evolves. Anxiously attached adults repeat the same emotional choreography. They swing between craving closeness and unconsciously demanding emotional consistency that no human can sustain. They want you close, always. Present, always. Responsive, always. Now imagine, you become that figure for someone. Not by force, not by manipulation, but simply by presence. You bring calm to their storm. Your routines become their emotional compass. Your voice soothes what their childhood never healed. You are no longer just a partner, friend, or companion. You become what the caregiver should have been long ago. A sanctuary, a shield, a sense of safety. But here's the catch. This isn't love. This is entrapment. Because the moment you seek space, the moment you breathe for yourself, their alarm system activates. Your silence becomes proof of rejection. Your absence, even temporary, feels like betrayal. And your independence? An unforgivable abandonment. The reactions can be overwhelming. Panic, manipulation, guilt-tripping, emotional outbursts. But it's not truly about you. Carl Jung's insight deepens the diagnosis. The anxious individual projects not only symbolic meaning onto you, they project salvation. So when you walk away, it's not just a breakup. It's a collapse. Not because of what you did, but because of what they never developed within themselves. A stable, internal sense of emotional grounding. And this is where Margaret Mahler becomes essential. She helps us understand the depth of that pain. Because for many, your departure is not just a heartbreak. It's a trauma echoing all the way back to their earliest years. A rupture so deep it activates wounds without names. Primitive pain buried beneath layers of coping. Mahler, a renowned psychoanalyst, devoted her work to answering one haunting question. How does a human truly become an individual? And what she discovered was as unsettling as it was enlightening. Many of the adults you see today, those who are emotionally dependent, those who collapse in the face of distance, those who panic when another person claims autonomy, they are not simply too sensitive or too attached. They are children, children who never completed a crucial psychological process, the separation individuation phase. According to Margaret Mahler, psychological birth does not coincide with biological birth. Being born from the womb is one thing. Emerging from emotional fusion with the mother, that is a much more complex journey. In the earliest months of life, a child doesn't know they are separate. They live in a state of complete symbiosis. There is no distinction between I and you. Mother and child are one undivided unit. The presence of the mother is not just comfort. It is existence itself. This fusion, in infancy, is natural. It provides safety, continuity, and life. But it is meant to dissolve gradually. The child must begin to realize, I am not you, I am me. This is how individuality is born. This is the path to emotional autonomy, to becoming whole without the constant presence of the other. But what happens when this process is interrupted? What happens when the bond is too tight, too chaotic, or too fragile? If the caregiver was unpredictable, emotionally absent, or overly intrusive, the child's development is derailed. They never fully learn where they end and where the other begins. And what remains unformed in childhood gets reenacted in adult relationships. This is where everything comes full circle. If you become that fused other for someone, their anchor, their mirror, their emotional spine, your presence becomes part of their psychic identity. You're not just a person to them. You are their grounding, their emotional perimeter. So when you pull away, not to hurt, but to protect your peace, to draw healthy boundaries, or simply to escape a toxic cycle. You are not just leaving. You are initiating a psychic crisis. You are triggering something they never chose to face. A kind of forced psychological birth. You are saying, we are not one. And for someone whose identity is still fused with another, this is devastating. Mahler called this rupture forced birth because it is violent. Not in action, but in psychic intensity. The adult may scream, beg, accuse, but at their core, it is a child crying out, "Don't leave me, I don't know who I am without you." It's not just heartbreak, it's existential terror. The more the fusion, the more brutal the separation. And in your withdrawal, you break not only the emotional dependency, but something else, the illusion of control. Because symbiotic relationships don't just idealize, they control. Beneath the love is an unconscious contract. You belong to me. You owe me. Owe me your time. Owe me your presence. Owe me your predictability. Owe me your unwavering loyalty. When you disrupt that script, by saying no, by reclaiming your individuality, by setting boundaries, you destabilize the system. And that's when the backlash begins. Manipulation, emotional blackmail, anger disguised as heartbreak, desperate efforts to pull you back. Not because of love, but because the illusion of safety is gone. People in these symbiotic patterns haven't learned one key skill: self-regulation. They rely entirely on the other to keep emotional chaos at bay. So when you step away, even for self-preservation, they perceive it as betrayal. Not just personal, but existential. That's why your decision to choose autonomy, to pull away, to protect your peace, often sparks a reaction that seems wildly disproportionate. Your absence is not seen as a right. It is interpreted as an attack. Not because of what you've done, but because of what your leaving represents. And here, a dangerous psychological mechanism begins to unfold. The need to restore control, at any cost. Sometimes this comes in obvious forms: demands, accusations, emotional blackmail. Other times, it's more insidious: a manipulative silence, a strategic display of victimhood, a moral twist where you're blamed for selfishness, for the simple act of choosing self-preservation. The anger directed at you is rarely about who you are. It is about what you symbolized. A broken psychic contract, one that was never spoken, but always expected, that you would always be available, that you would never change, never leave, that you would be the predictable support they never had. Carl Jung warned us, where love reigns, there is no will to power. Where power predominates, there love is lacking. In relationships like these, power replaces love, control replaces connection, care becomes manipulation, and what began as a bond between two people degenerates into an emotional prison, where only one person is allowed to breathe at a time. This is not love, this is emotional colonization. They are not connecting with your soul. They are claiming your function. You became a symbolic pillar, a stabilizer, a regulator, a mirror, and like any colony that seeks liberation, your awakening, your autonomy, will be treated not as growth, but as rebellion. While you were predictable, you were useful. But now that you are conscious, now that you seek to leave, now that you demand freedom, you become a threat. And this is the moment many people falter. They look at the other's pain and mistake it for love. They feel guilt. They step back from the edge of their own liberation and return to the prison, not because it's right, but because they cannot bear to see the other suffer. But let this be said clearly: they are not hurt by your love. They are hurt by the loss of control. They grieve not the relationship, but the emotional scaffolding they constructed upon you. And you cannot continue to erase yourself just to maintain someone else's illusion of stability. In the next part, we will explore this further. We will talk about the void, the existential hole that opens when the emotional mirror disappears, and why, in truth, their collapse was never truly about you. If this is resonating with you, you'll find real depth and healing in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's core teachings and offers practical tools for self-understanding. The link is in the pinned comment. There comes a point in this journey when you must face a truth that is both liberating and painful. The problem was never you. No matter how loud the cries, no matter how convincing the guilt, the depth of their suffering is not the measure of their love. It is the measure of their dependency. And that difference is everything. Because love honors your autonomy. It respects your rhythms. It allows you to change, to grow, to breathe. But dependency does not. Dependency says, stay the same, never leave, never evolve, be who I need you to be, forever. So when you finally choose to evolve, when you seek air, freedom, space, dependency fights back. It pleads, it accuses, it manipulates, not to love you, but to pull you back into a role you no longer fit. There is a moment where everything becomes blurry, when the other person's pain, their breakdown, their tears, they feel so raw, so intense, that you begin to question yourself. Was I too cold? Was I selfish? Should I have stayed a little longer? But that guilt is not yours. It is the emotional residue of a bond that was never built on who you are, only on what you could provide. Your decision to walk away is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is a radical act of self-love. Because when someone collapses the moment you leave, what truly surfaces is not grief, but emptiness, a void they never learned to fill on their own. You were not loved for your essence. You were used as a sedative, a mirror, a stabilizer, and your absence, it simply exposed what was already broken inside them. But that doesn't mean you're to blame. It only means you can no longer carry a burden that was never yours to begin with. No relationship is fair if it demands that you erase yourself so someone else can feel whole. It's a cruel exchange. One breathes, the other suffocates. One stays whole, the other disintegrates. Your distance might just be the beginning of the other's real healing, if they're willing to look in the mirror and face what they've avoided for so long. Because make no mistake, what they feel now isn't just loss. It's a mirror cracking. It's a soul screaming, who am I without this person? And perhaps, for the first time, they'll be forced to answer it. In the next part of this journey, we'll explore the process Jung called individuation, and why emotional freedom is not a luxury, but an essential step toward becoming fully yourself. But make no illusions, freedom has a price. When you finally say, I am no longer what you need me to be, you won't just trigger sadness. You will awaken projection, rage, guilt, blame. You will be accused of abandonment, of being heartless, of being cold. But none of this is about you. It is a desperate attempt to keep alive an illusion that you were the glue holding their entire emotional system together. The decision to walk away from a symbiotic, dependent relationship is one of the bravest things a person can do. Because the hardest part isn't walking away. It's not going back. Not when they cry. Not when they beg. Not when they weaponize their pain to make you doubt your path. This is where most people surrender. They trade their freedom for the illusion of peace. But a peace born from fear is not peace, it's imprisonment. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that journey, that sacred individuation, requires rupture. It demands that you break the roles others assigned you, that you step out of the masks, out of the emotional roles you were never meant to wear. And yes, that will upset people who once relied on your compliance, your silence, your emotional labor. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. You did not come into this world to be someone's emotional crutch. You were born to become, to discover who you are beneath all the noise, beneath the guilt, beneath the projections, and to live your truth, even if it costs you attachments that were never truly love, only contracts, and contracts can be broken when the price becomes your soul. So if anything in this video resonated, if you saw a reflection of your own life in these words, I invite you to comment below. I choose to be whole. Say it not just in the comment section. Say it to yourself, to the part of you still grieving, to the part still scared. Because that sentence, that choice, can be the beginning of your real life. And don't stop here. There's more waiting for you. The next video continues this path. It deepens the truth, and maybe, just maybe, delivers the key you've been searching for all along. Right finger watch the next video. Right finger subscribe to the channel if this message speaks to your soul. Right finger and leave your story in the comments, because someone else might need to hear it too. Remember, those who are truly awake never go back to sleep.